Okay, hello Cloud Gurus and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture we're going to start interacting with our S3 programmatically. So the first thing we need to do is connect to GitHub and download our code. So if you type in here git clone and then https://github.com/acloudguru/S3 and hit enter. And now if you type in ls, you will see that a new directory called S3 has been created. So we go to our S3 directory, and inside here is some code. So we've got cleanup.php, connect to aws.php, create bucket.php, create file.php, read file.php, and then readme. So the first thing we want to do is just have a look at the code. Now we could look at it in Nano, but it's going to be a bit user friendly, so I'm just going to switch over to Text Wrangler, which is where I've got the code, and I've downloaded these 5 files. And if we go to connect to AWS first, you can go back to your browser. If you want to look at it in SSH, you can just go Nano and then connect to aws.php and have a look at it in there. But this is basically our connection string. So you've always got to have this code basically for the PHP SDK to work. So you've got to include the SDK using the Composer autoloader. So we've got require and then where our autoload path is stored. So in this instance it's var www/html/vendor/autoload.php. If we actually quit here and we go back a directory, again I'll just clear the screen, we go ls, you'll see in the vendor section we've got our autoload.php, and you can go in and have a look at that code if you want. It's not very exciting though, and it's basically just that loads up essentially the SDK. So that's what this line of code does. Then here we're saying use AWS S3 client. So this is specifically telling the SDK that we're going to be interacting programmatically with S3. When we go onto the DynamoDB section of the course and we start interacting with that, you'll see that this changes to DynamoDB. And then in here we've got our connection string. Now because we're using a role, it's just client and then factory. If we were using if we're using usernames and passwords, this code would look slightly different. Again, not really within the scope of the exam. You can learn about the different ways to connect, using credentials versus using roles. The one thing I really will say to you, I cannot stress this enough, if you are going to use credentials, don't store them inside your PHP files, especially if you're going to upload them to GitHub, because there's tools out there now that scan GitHub all the time looking for AWS credentials, and as soon as they find AWS credentials they'll try and use them to mine bitcoins. And I've seen so many posts about this, about people accidentally exposing their credentials only for like a few minutes or even seconds. They go in and remove it from GitHub, but by then it's too late. So if you do accidentally expose your credentials on GitHub, go into IAM and delete those credentials immediately. For this reason it's much safer to use things like roles. So anyway, I digress. That's just a bit of practical experience that I've had. So this is connect to aws.php is essentially our connection string, and we'll be invoking this in all the other files. So the first file that we use is create bucket, and you can see here we open PHP, and then in here we've got our connection string. So we're just saying include connect to aws.php. So this is the first, and I'm just going to run through each line of code. Again, this is not a how to code in PHP course, this is how to pass the AWS Certified Developer Associate exam, but I will just quickly explain what each line of code does. So here we're creating a unique bucket name. In here we are going to create our bucket on S3 using our bucket name, and here is some HTML which basically outputs what we've done. So it says hello Cloud Guru, displays the little logo of the course, says you have successfully created a bucket called whatever the bucket name is. That's going to be a unique name, and then it's going to provide us with a link to the next file, which is create file, and here we're passing the bucket name to the next web page that we're going to visit. So we're going to create file.php. So go over here and have a look at what this does. So again, we've got our connection string. Here I've just wrote a little note. So files in Amazon S3 are called objects and are stored in buckets. A specific object is referred to by its key or name and holds data. In this file we create an object called acloudguru.txt that contains the data hello cloud gurus, and we upload it or put it into our newly created bucket, and that's essentially what this code is going to do. So here it's we're just getting the bucket name, so that was what was passed to us in the URL in the link that we created in the last file. We then go in and we create the file name. So this is cloudguru.txt, so that's our key or file name, and then we're basically going to put the file and data into our bucket. So here's our result, client put object, so that's the call that we're making, and then we're creating an array, and then so we've got our bucket, and that's the bucket name, the key, that's the file name, and then the body's the data we're going to write there, which is hello cloud gurus. And then essentially here's just the HTML to create a new web page. So it's going to say file has been, and then the file name has been successfully uploaded to the bucket, and then it's going to output the bucket name. Again, it's going to show our little logo, and then it's going to redirect us to a new web page or create a link to a new web page called read file, and it's going to pass both the bucket name and the key name. So if we go over to read file, in here we've got our connection string again. Now we're getting our bucket and our key name, but we're not getting our code. And now, the code inside, or the data inside that file. And basically we're using this code to connect, and we're going to get the object. So here we're getting object from this bucket using this key, and then we're going to save the result of the body. So we're reading the body, or what's in that object, and we're going to save it to data. And then here, this web page, we're just saying the bucket is, and that's the name, the object is, and that's the name, and the data is, and that's the name, and crucially this data is what we're pulling out of S3. Again, we show our image, and next we go to essentially to a web page that will delete the bucket, so called cleanup.php, and again we're passing the bucket name and the key name. And if we go across to our cleanup, we can see here that we've got our connection string again. We're just defining our variables, and it's important to remember that buckets can't be deleted unless they're empty. So the first thing we need to do is delete our object, which is this code here. So we just need to know the bucket name and the key name, and we're using the method delete object. And then here we've got the code to tell the user that the file has been deleted. So it's just saying yep, object, and then the name has successfully been deleted, and then we're deleting the bucket, and now we're just giving ourselves a little welcome screen. Okay, so again, if you don't know PHP and this all looks very foreign, don't worry, you're not going to be quizzed on any of this in the exam. It's just a good practical example of showing you how we're going to interact with the AWS platform using PHP and our PHP SDK. So the way we trigger all this off is we just need to go to the URL. So what you need to do is go over to your browser, and then we just need to change this link from test to /s3, and then it's create bucket.php. And if it all works, you'll see this page, and it says hello cloud guru. So the logo, you have successfully created a bucket called acloudguru, and then some random numbers. Click here to continue. Now before you click on here to continue, if we just go across to our AWS console and go into S3, you should be able to see that bucket. So there it is, acloudguru, and then it ends in 070. I'm just going to click on it, you're going to see that this one is empty. So there it is, ending in 070. Now I click here to continue. And now it says file cloudguru.txt has successfully uploaded to a Cloud Guru. And if we go back here and just refresh the screen and go back into the bucket, you can see, yep, there we go, a cloudguru.txt. Now if I click on that and download it, let's just go see, have a look what's actually inside it. It says hello Cloud Gurus, so it's great. And now I'm just going to go back to my web page and say click here to read the file, which we've already done manually. But this code is just going through, and here we go, the data in the object is hello Cloud Gurus. So it's downloaded it again, and now we're just going to click here, and then that's going to delete our object and our bucket. And if we go through here and just refresh, it's gone. There we go. So hopefully that was straightforward and it worked for you. If it didn't work for you, please let me know and we'll try and troubleshoot. That code is is up on GitHub. I'm happy for any student to repurpose it to any way that they wish. So feel free to download it, make your own changes, maybe create your own little site, using the code. And you can find out a whole lot more about, if we just go back to this link here, about using the AWS SDK for PHP by reading the developer guide and the API documentation and the developer blog. Each SDK has similar sites, so it depends what language that you're most comfortable within. I will add a lecture on how to do something similar with Python a bit later, but again, it's not really relevant to the exam. It's good to know how to do this and have some practical experience, but the purpose of this course is to help you pass the exam. It's not to help you teach you how to code. I am considering doing an entire course on coding with Python and interacting with AWS, because I think that's a really useful thing to know how to do, especially if you get a job working with AWS. It's one of the sort of key jobs going at the moment is interacting with AWS using Python. So it is a really good skill to learn, but the purpose of this course is to help you pass the AWS Developer Associate exam. So if you have any questions, please let me know. If it didn't work for you, please also let me know and we'll go through and troubleshoot it. But if not, feel free to move on to the next lecture. Thank you.